help our listeners understand what is going on in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and the unfolding there. It's a supposed ceasefire. That's not really the case, which is often the case with the wars within the Middle East. What is taking place, and are Israel and the US really in sync in this war against Iran, or how do you think this is going to play out?
All right, that's a lot of questions there. Let's unpack this. No, there's a lot to unpack. Okay, so let's start with your last question, which is: are the U.S. and Israel totally in sync? And we're very fond since February 28th, since the launch of this war, of thinking of the United States and Israel as shoulder to shoulder, totally aligned, working together as one military. And that's how the Israelis were talking about it. That's how Secretary of War Hegseth was talking about it at the beginning. But I was kind of throwing cold water on that in a number of media appearances I made and in some articles that I wrote. I pointed this out. I said, whoa, hold on a second. It's great that we're cooperating right now, that the two greatest air forces in the world are working together. That's awesome. But President Trump is not the president of the state of Israel. He's the president of the United States of America, and his concern is for American interests. And it would be terribly naive of us to think that U.S. interests and Israeli interests are not going to diverge at some point, that we simply do not have the same interests here. And I said this even before the war started, in the run up to it. I said this in a number of interviews I did, that at some point there will be this fork in the road where our interests will not align, and we just have to be clear-eyed and prepared for it, and just understand it's going to happen. Now, are we seeing that happen now? It could be that we are. We'll see where it goes. President Trump's unpredictability is actually a doctrine, and this is something that a lot of people don't know. I'll get to the Strait of Hormuz in a moment. I just want to set the table, Stephen.
Yeah.
Back in 2016, when President Trump was running for president the first time, he wasn't even the nominee yet. He hadn't even, the convention hadn't happened. He wasn't even the nominee. He was just one person, one celebrity running for president. And this is in April 2016. He gave his first foreign policy speech. And I remember watching it at the time. At the time I watched the foreign policy speech. It was on April 27th, 2016. You can look it up. And there was a lot of curiosity about it because everyone knew who Donald Trump was, this real estate guy, and he was very outspoken. But the one area where he had zero qualifications and zero experience was, of course, foreign policy. He was an American businessman. So you want to talk about finance, you want to talk about monetary policy, you want to talk about, infrastructure. Of course, he's qualified. But why would he be qualified to talk about foreign policy? And he said there's this one moment in the speech, and it was in the text of the speech. It wasn't off the cuff, which is significant. It was part of what he was laying out. He talked about the need, when dealing with adversaries, the need for America to become unpredictable. And he said the word about 3 or 4 times in the space of about 30 seconds. He said, we have to become unpredictable. We cannot, we always telegraph what we're doing. We're sending troops. We have a press conference. We announce it. We're going to bomb something. We have a press conference. We announce it. We have to become unpredictable, and we have to become unpredictable starting now. He said that. And I bring that up because even those of us who are in favor of President Trump and who like a lot of what he's done, we kind of think of him as this erratic guy. He's kind of all over the place, and maybe he's, got a different idea each day that he wakes up. That's the way he wants us to perceive him. But there is nothing erratic about the man. This is all very carefully gamed out in his mind. But his unpredictability is deliberate. So when you hear him, like, let's say in the lead up to the war, where he's like, oh, maybe we'll get a deal. Maybe we'll bomb them. Maybe we'll get a deal. But, if we don't get a deal, it's going to be really bad. And, you're just constantly like, okay, what's he signaling here? And the answer is he's being unpredictable deliberately. Okay. So therefore, analyzing him, and I say this as someone who does a lot of geopolitical analysis for a living, analyzing President Trump is a completely different world because of this deliberate misdirection plays. So everything has to be with this caveat that it's Trump and he doesn't show his cards, as a matter of course. Okay. Now what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz? What's going on in Iran? So if you go back to the beginning of the war, on the first day of the war, President Trump gave an 8-minute speech where he announced that the war was happening. And in that speech, he laid out the objectives of the war. And he stated 4 objectives: the destruction of their navy, the destruction of their ballistic missiles, the ending their support for terrorist proxies and their network around the world, and the destruction of their nuclear facilities so that they could never have a nuclear weapon. Those were four, and they were stated as objectives. Then later in the speech, while he didn't state it as an objective, I would say he stated as an aspiration, but the last 2 minutes of the speech were all about that he was coming as a liberator of the Iranian people. He said, and to the Iranian people, I say, the hour of your freedom has arrived, and that no president has done what I'm about to do for you. You've been waiting for this moment for 47 years. You might remember some of this rhetoric. He went on and on like this, talking about how he's going to give them cover to come back out into the streets. Okay? Now, I say this with such precision because I rewatched the speech a few days ago when this deal was announced, because I really felt that we've all been kind of dragged along through this, following the play-by-play, and we are where we are, and we've forgotten where we were when we started. And I say this, it kind of depressed me to watch it, because, the proxy, if the deal as it's been reported goes through, there's a lot of consternation in Israel about it, because if the deal, because what's been reported by Axios, by the New York Times, and again, this is all with that big caveat about Trump, that we know that there are aspects of the deal that have not been made public. We don't actually know what's in it, but based on what's been reported by Reuters, New York Times, Axios, so we're pretty, and also the way Marco Rubio's been talking. Marco Rubio, on his trip to India and then on the airplane again, was very clear about two issues that they care about, that this deal is really about: opening the Strait of Hormuz and getting the enriched uranium out, or like the nuclear issue, basically. We'll call it the nuclear file. There's a number of pieces to it. And he said when he was in India that this has been the president's position all along, consistently. And I'm thinking, really? Those are the only two issues we care about? If they get all the enriched uranium out, if we get the atomic energy, the International Atomic Energy Agency to secure it all, and we know that they have no more nuclear abilities, let's say we got to that point, and the Strait of Hormuz was totally open, no mines, no fear of any disruptions, it's open, free shipping. Are we satisfied with that outcome? The Iranian proxy network is worldwide. It's not just funneling cash to Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas. They have a massive drug and human trafficking network that runs across South America. They have bases in Paraguay. This is an octopus with many arms to it, and this needs to be dismantled. There will be regional and global instability coming out of Tehran so long as this regime remains in power in any way. What's more, the Iranian people, I mean, Trump might say, well, I gave them the opportunity. I dropped the bombs. They could have come out into the streets. But no, they couldn't. They couldn't have come out into the streets. In that portion of that speech, Trump also spoke, he made this dramatic statement. He said, to the members of the IRGC, I say, lay down your weapons and you will be granted amnesty, or you will face certain death. And I looked at that and I thought, whatever happened to that? The IRGC guys are still armed. They're still in the street. They're still killing people who they view as dissidents, and they're not going away. The fact that the people are starving and that so much has been destroyed doesn't change the fact that the people are still being oppressed, and they had no ability to come out into the streets. The IRGC was not degraded enough to make it safe for them to come out into the streets. And what's more, you might say to yourself, well, they know that the Americans are there, and if they went out into the streets, there's no way the regime would start mowing them down again because, America would have their back. Really? Why should I, if I'm an Iranian and I see President Trump trying desperately to cut a deal with Ghalibaf and Aragchi and Vaidi and all the guys who are responsible for slaughtering us, and he's trying to cut a deal, he's trying to do a Venezuela model, right? Which means that you decapitate the top of the regime and you make a deal with the next tier down and you keep everything orderly and you work with those guys. That keeps the criminals who slaughtered the Iranian people in power. And if I'm one of the people in the street, if I'm one of the Iranians who wants my freedom and would be willing to go out into the street if I knew that America had my back, why should I think that America has my back if Trump is trying to cut a deal with the people that I'd be trying to pull down? So I think that, we have to be very clear-eyed. Is it the American interest to simply deal with the nuclear issue, open up the Straits of Hormuz, secure those things and get out of there? It might very well be. This goes back to your question of the lockstep between the United States and Israel. Because with all of the various pressures on President Trump, he has oil prices. This war is increasingly unpopular for the majority of Americans. Most Americans do not want to go back to kinetic action. They just want to see stability, the price of oil drop. They don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. They do buy that. They do agree with that. They're reasonable about that. So if Trump can secure the nuclear issue, get the Straits of Hormuz open, see oil prices drop, and get to some sort of managed situation, even if it throws the Iranian people under the bus, and even if it means that the proxy network still is intact, if he's satisfied with that, you could argue that America, for the duration of the Trump administration, got what they wanted, and it would be an absolute betrayal of the Iranian people, who've been betrayed many times before by Western leaders, and it would also not satisfy Israel, which leaves many questions open. I'll leave it there, and you can ask a follow-up.
No, there's so many valid points within that statement. I mean, just a few weeks ago on a Sunday, a couple of weekends ago in London, there was a 20,000 strong demonstration in support of Israel outside 10 Downing Street. And a quarter of those, 5,000 of them, were Iranians.